Why We See Movies podcast. I'm your host, Ron.After. Joining me, as always, we've got Paul.
Hello.
And Ivan.
What's up?
And Darren.
Yeah, hello everyone.
Today we're going to be reviewing the 21st film from the Marvel Universe, Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson and Samuel L. Jackson. Later on, we'll do our Rant and Rave segment, where we all get caught up in what we've been watching lately. But first, let's see what's going on in the entertainment world with...
You on the mark!
Hey, guys.
Hey.
The Four Horsemen of the Apocalypse. It's been a long time since we've all been together.
Can only mean something good.
Yeah, let's ride.
It can only mean a Marvel movie.
Yeah.
We weren't together for Ant-Man and the Wasp, but last time all four of us sat together was for Infinity War, so it's been a while. That's what kids and family will do. Okay, let's begin the news with a few celebrity passings to talk about. One from a few weeks ago, Bruno Ganz, the great German actor, passed away. He was in films like Wings of Desire and played Adolf Hitler magnificently in a movie called Downfall.
Yeah, I don't know if that's what anyone wants in their epitaph, but he was the best Hitler ever in the history of movies, I'd say. So.
He's the one that when you see those clips where he's angry and pounding on the table. And
yeah, I've seen like a dozen different subtitles.
Like, I want my Domino's pizza. Where is it?
It's a great performance. If you haven't seen Downfall, check it out just for a slice of history. But Bruno Ganz as Hitler is just outstanding.
Mm-hmm. And Wim Wenders' film Wings of Desire.
Wings of Desire is very good too.
It's kind of a seminal film from the 80s.
Yeah, our friend Neil Simmons is a big fan of Wings of Desire. I know that for a fact.
Yeah,
he loves it.
I think he tried to pawn me off his copy a little while ago. It's like, no, I have it, Neil.
Well, he should have given it to me. I only have it on VHS. So
is that right?
If you're listening, Neil, give me your Wings of Desire.
Offer him $1. But it's a really good movie. It's a black and white kind of surreal film. He plays an angel. He was dissatisfied with being an angel and goes back to Earth and watches human beings. And it's kind of a melancholy film.
Probably a little arty for some people. I'm sure that's why Neil doesn't like it. But yeah, it's a good film.
But great actor. Been around for a long time. So yeah, he'll be missed. Bigger name that just passed away last week was Luke Perry. 52 only. He was, of course, the star of Beverly Hills 90210.
I think you got those numbers 90210. Yeah.
I'm sure you weren't a big fan of the show.
Well, I never saw an episode of it, but were you guys fans of that in the 90s?
No, I think my sister was, so I've seen episodes of it on TV, but it's one of those classic shows where people in their 30s were playing high school students.
Like Melrose Place, kind of. It reminded me.
Melrose Place
shows
kind
were
of
pretty popular.
It was spun off of 90210. Both of them were on when I was in junior high and then high school. And
primetime soap opera kind of stuff.
Yeah. I actually recorded the show, so I was a huge fan. It just hit me at the right age. There was actually a character in that show that looked remarkably like me at that time, and then he ended up committing suicide, which really grounded me to the show. No, I was a huge fan at the time and whatnot. I mean, I haven't seen it in forever, but still carry a torch for Jenny Garth from the show. But yeah, Luke Perry was a staple of the show and played his part really well, and he was really good in the show for what he was asked to do. So
yeah. Checking out his bio, I was surprised. He's been working consistently since then. He has like 95 film credits.
And he's in Riverdale currently.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that. That's kind of updated Beverly Hills, a little bit with the Archie Comics gang. I've never seen an episode of it, but I've heard good things.
My wife really likes the show. She watches it like crazy.
Is he like one of the parents?
Yeah, he plays Archie's dad, like the main father. And then he was in the Buffy the Vampire Slayer movie.
The original one,
right?
Yeah, and he actually had a little small part in The Fifth Element as well, at the very beginning, if you guys remember.
Oh, yeah, that's right. And I was surprised to see he actually just filmed, I don't know how big of a role he has, but he's going to be in Quentin Tarantino's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Oh, really? Wow.
So that will be his last film work. But very sad. I know he had a wife and 2 kids. It's
kind of out of the blue, too.
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's move on to more news. Amazon's upcoming Lord of the Rings series, that huge, big budgeted series, they've announced a few details from it. It looks like it's going to be set mostly in the Second Age. I don't know if you guys know what that means in Middle Earth terms.
That's like 3,000 years or so before the events of Lord of the Rings.
Right. It deals with a guy named Morgoth, big baddie. I've heard that it's going to go all the way through defeating Morgoth and end right at the end of maybe defeating Sauron.
The first round of defeating Sauron?
Right.
Yeah.
You know, the clip that they show at the beginning of Lord of the Rings.
From the prologue,
Right, with Isildur. And
that's all. Yeah, if you've read the Silmarillion, you know that's all Second Age, Middle Earth stuff. So,
but then again,
fun to look forward to.
It's called Lord of the Rings. So you think they will eventually get into the actual novels?
Well, the rings are forged in the Second Age, right? The Rings of Power. So I don't need another version of Lord of the Rings.
I think they're calling it Lord of the Rings just because people recognize the name.
Oh, sure.
That makes sense.
And they paid
a fortune
for it.
The other thing, people are going to be like, what is this, right? They're just piggybacking off that name and the popularity.
Brand recognition.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Exactly.
I think they've said they're going for 5 seasons of it. So they could maybe spend the first 2 or 3 years in that Second Age. And who knows? I would imagine that they're eventually going to have to deal with something in Lord of the Rings. We're going to have to see Frodo eventually.
Yeah.
But then they'd have to skip over the Hobbit as well, right?
Yeah.
Are you guys interested in it? If it's the Second Age, I am.
Especially if it's new material and not a retelling of Frodo's story.
Exactly.
It's done so perfectly.
Yeah.
I don't need to see it again.
But if it's done so perfectly, you might want to see them go. How perfect can they make it? Could it be even more perfect than what Jackson did?
I think you're setting yourself up for failure because you're already, before you've even filmed anything, you're being measured against something that's already held to a high standard, and it's ingrained in the culture at this point. So I agree with Darren. If it's something that's supplementary to what I've already seen on the screen, I'm absolutely all for it. If it's a retelling,
they said it's set in the Second Age. Lord of the Rings takes place in the Third Age, or the dawn of the Third Age, right? So it doesn't sound like it would really be what they're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know how many episodes they're planning each season. I know, as I said on an earlier show, this will be the highest budgeted entertainment project ever at almost $1 billion, counting rights and pre-production. So,
well, if nothing else, it'll look pretty.
It better. Yeah.
Amazon can afford it.
That's petty money for Bezos. Okay, I don't have much news this week, so I'll talk about something I haven't seen, which is the final trailer for Season 8 of Game of Thrones dropped. I refuse to watch any images from this. I want to go in clean.
I felt the same way, but I caved and watched the trailer.
I didn't.
Yeah, I avoided everything. As soon as I see anything to do with it, I'm just...
Thinking back at all our podcasts, we haven't really even talked about Game of Thrones very much.
Not a lot.
We've never done a show on it.
No,
but
we've kind of talked about it and never really did.
Yeah, it's my favorite television show of all time right now. And if it ends as good as it's been, no doubt will it be my favorite show ever.
Yeah, I might very well agree with you. I feel the same way. Anyone who hasn't watched the trailer and is on the fence, I'd say it doesn't contain anything you wouldn't expect from it. There's no big plot spoilers or anything like that. Just some cool imagery and things that you figure are going to maybe be touched upon, like a battle.
Enough to whet your appetite.
Yeah, but I mean, it's only about a month away now, so yeah, why bother if it's that close too?
Yeah.
So.
Are you guys going to watch it week by week?
Hell yeah.
That's one show that there's certain shows that I don't feel the need to catch up week to week, but that's a show because it's much like we just finished talking about Lord of the Rings. It's so ingrained in the culture. Game of Thrones just as much. Like people that might not normally be interested in a sci-fi fantasy type show, they're watching this and that's kind of their limited exposure to the genre. So this is a show that I feel like I have to stay on top of. Otherwise things are going to get said, at work or passing comments to other friends. Like you are very lucky if you manage to miss spoilers. And this is probably not going to be my favorite show of all time because like a Battlestar Galactica is up for me, but this is right in that pantheon of near perfect television for me. So
yeah, I almost wish I had a cryogenic chamber. I could just plug myself in there and wake up when all the episodes are ready to watch.
Yeah.
Plus I can't wait for it. Each episode comes. I want to sit there and start it as soon as I can.
April 14th. Mark it on your calendars. All right, that's it for news, but there's one more thing I just want to mention. I found something online the other day, and it's so weird. You guys know the actor Patton Oswalt?
Yeah.
Have you heard about his King of Queens cameo?
No.
A few years ago, he guest starred on an episode of King of Queens, and he decided to do something funny. He thought it's a kind of a party scene, a bunch of people in the background, and he's mingling. And he thought it would be funny if for the entirety of the scene, he remained absolutely frozen and didn't move. And he did it, and no one said a word. None of the producers came on set and said, "Oh, this guy's acting funny." And it's on the episode. You can YouTube and click it. It is one of the weirdest things you'll ever see in the middle of just a standard sitcom. It's hilarious. It's hilarious that he got away with it.
But I thought he was on that show for extended period. I just did that in like
he
one
told
episode.
the story, so I have no idea that he said he did it on this one episode. I don't know King of Queens. I've never seen a second of it besides what I just watched.
I think I've seen
if it was a semi-regular, then maybe he had more
leeway
to get away with something like that.
They weren't eyeing his every second as like, oh, he's been here, he knows what he's doing,
right?
So or maybe he wanted it out and decided, let's see if this will piss him off enough to fire me.
No, he just did it as a goof. and couldn't believe that nobody noticed it. This was like years ago, but he brought it up in an interview that I'll check it out. And it's something to see. It's pretty funny. Okay, that's it for news. Shall we move on to our feature review, guys?
Let's do it.
Sure.
Let it soar.
So, Skrulls are the bad guys. And you're a Kree, a race of noble warriors.
Heroes. Noble warrior heroes.
Your life began the day it nearly ended. We found you. With no memory, we made you one of us. So you could live longer, stronger, superior. You were reborn.
I keep having these memories. Something in my past is the key to all of this.
Would you like to know what you really are?
Captain Marvel was directed by Ryan Fleck and Anna Boden. It stars Brie Larson, Samuel Jackson, Jude Law, and Annette Bening. I'll give you the plot. Air Force pilot Carol Danvers searches for the clues to her past after being abducted and imbued with powers by an alien race. Okay, I'll begin my first thoughts on Captain Marvel. Remember our last episode when we said, I hope Marvel can continue their streak with me? Well, it's never been closer, a closer call than this one. I am really on the line with giving this a positive review. I guess I had a pretty good time with it, and I'm probably being harder on it only because it's Marvel. I would say I liked it less than Aquaman. And I remember on the Aquaman podcast saying that I thought every Marvel movie was better than Aquaman. So that has changed. Basically, it's a confused movie about a confused character. She begins the movie having really no explanation for her backstory, and the movie is kind of muddling in the way it's telling its story, I thought. A long time ago on the podcast, I said that I was worried about Brie Larson as a casting choice, and I think this is the first time where Marvel has made a big mistake. I don't think that she has the gravitas to play this character. She's walking through the movie kind of aloof, like she doesn't care. She should be a character who's lost and adrift right now, and she comes across as
very uncharismatic.
Yeah. The 90s setting didn't really work for me. I don't think there's one really great action sequence in the entire movie, and the ending I thought was very anticlimactic. There's some good things in the movie, but I'll save that for later. Paul, what'd you think?
Before I jump into mine, I'm going to preface my reaction to the movie by giving my wife's reaction to the movie, because I think it's very important to realize that maybe this movie isn't geared towards me. She came out of it loving it, and I think the representation and diversity is a good thing, and having a hero like this out there that maybe other people other than myself can gravitate towards is great. I didn't love this movie at all. I came out of it and I thought, yeah, I couldn't really put my finger on why I didn't love it, but when you're thinking about why you're not loving a movie while you're still watching the movie is a little bit of a problem. Yeah, there was a lack of charisma. The story wasn't really that engaging for me. It looked pretty, but there wasn't enough new about it, and for me, I don't gravitate towards all-powerful characters like Captain Marvel, like Superman. Those characters just don't tend to be interesting to me. So it was good. I was entertained, but I wish I loved it like my wife did.
For me, this entire movie felt rushed. And there was no backstory given to anything. I didn't have a problem with Brie Larson's performance. I do agree with you about her nonchalant attitude.
Right.
But to me, it kind of felt more like that was a script. I think it was the fact that they were like, okay, you're the first female superhero that we're doing, so we got to make you a fun character in a fun movie versus you being like brooding the entire time going, I don't know who I am. I don't know my story. What's going on, right? I definitely thought that this movie would have done better in two parts. Part one done last phase where it was all about the Kree and Skrull war. And then the movie ends with her remembering that she's being screwed over, goes against the Kree, and then the movie ends with her coming back to Earth. That way you can flash out everything to give it more time. Whereas this one, it was just so fully rushed. I was like, I don't care who's betraying who, because there was never any established relationship between these people for these people to care about being betrayed.
Okay. Darren.
Probably I liked it more than all three of you, but maybe not by a ton. It's better than Guardians Volume 2. It's better than both Ant-Man movies. It's better than Iron Man 2. It's better than Thor 2, but not by a mile. It's in the upper echelon of the lower third of Marvel movies, I guess I'd say. I like what you touched on there, Ivan. I think it might have been better, now that you say it, as a two-parter split up, because it does feel a little unfocused. I didn't even know the character was an Earthling. I didn't know enough about her to know that. I thought, okay, so she comes from the Kree Empire, but what's her connection on Earth? I guess we'll find out in this movie. And you see a lot of flashbacks to Annette Bening's character, flashbacks to her father. And okay, so this is going to come into focus in maybe the middle part of the movie, and this is going to come together, and you're going to see what this all means. And it never comes together, and none of that kind of means anything. Yeah, it's an unfocused movie, and what the hell? I'll give my wife's opinion too and say she's kind of on the same boat as everyone of us around this table. She wasn't as big on it. She didn't love it by any stretch of the imagination. I do think Brie Larson is a lot better than maybe you, Ron, and Paul are giving her credit for. I think she was very good. The problem with her maybe lack of charisma is a screenplay problem. Because
maybe, you're right. I should mention there's 6 writers on this movie, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Wow.
Most of what we're seeing is her coming from the Kree Empire, where she's a pretty powerful warrior. She doesn't know what it's like to be on Earth and be humble and be a regular person. And the screenplay didn't integrate that into her story well once they found out who she was. I think the movie is saved by the actors. Her friend on Earth, the other woman who was a pilot in the Air Force, we see nothing of their past together, but I think that actress did such a good job in her role that you kind of feel, okay, there's a little something there. I can feel them reconnect a little bit.
It's the only heart in the movie, I think.
But even that was still too weak, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the screenplay has problems. Overall, I enjoyed the movie. I would give it a thumbs up. Recommend it to Marvel fans. But I think there's a lot better material to come involving Captain Marvel in the next phase of the MCU.
I hope so. The basis of the movie is her being lost and adrift and not knowing exactly who she is. Mm-hmm. But the movie never really has any tension building towards that.
And it is anticlimactic, like you
she's
say.
walking through the movie like she's not all that bothered by it.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, and the audience shouldn't be adrift with the character. We should be, a little more
right. We should know some things that she doesn't that build tension.
That would help things a lot, yeah.
And as far as, I think there's too much bad humor in the movie, for one thing. Most of the joke fell flat with my audience.
Funny. Yeah.
And as much as Samuel Jackson is great and they are good together, I was like, who is this character? This is no Nick Fury that I know. Mm-hmm. He doesn't seem like the same Nick Fury from the other movies. He seems so lightweight and not very serious. So that was kind of a problem with me. I kept waiting for the old Nick Fury to show up. And going back to what you said, Paul, about all-powerful characters, they never really explain what her powers are in this movie. Basically, it just seems whenever she needs to blast a hole in something or just use her powers, she kind of does, which also undercuts the tension.
She never seemed in danger. There was never any stakes, and that's exactly the problem I had out of it. I was never fearful that she was ever going to be scratched. I mean, we know she's going to come out of the movie okay because of the end of Avengers Infinity War, but there was never a doubt in my mind that she was even going to break a nail.
But even when she was fighting certain people that betrayed her, she was never angry or lashing out at these people. She always had like a smirk on her face. Like she was more having fun and goofing around than she was like, oh, you people screwed up my life. Right. You did all of this.
Like I have a feeling they want to replace her as the new Robert Downey Jr. in the MCU, kind of the big heroic type, and maybe giving her a bit of that attitude. But what he does with Tony Stark, he's flip and jokey when it's appropriate. But Stark has plenty of scenes where he's serious in his movies, and he's not joking around. And I didn't really see that in her character. There never seems to be a moment where she's really cares about anything. And that made it a problem for me to care about her. One other thing I want to mention, I really didn't like the 90s music. Did you guys feel like it was just like slathered on like wallpaper?
Yeah, I felt that it was, they kept throwing it in very quick succession. It was almost like, let's beat you over the head that this is the 90s.
Almost like Suicide Squad bad, where they're trying to just hammer the music on top of what's happening home. Like when it got to that final fight with Just a Girl, No Doubt playing, I like that song, but I thought it totally didn't fit the scene.
Yeah, and I like all the songs that they used, but they're all the obvious songs that you would pick too. Like there didn't seem to be be any creative thought
Right,
into
yeah,
what
exactly.
to use. It's like, well, if we
90s
just do
girl
a quick-
songs and you
Exactly.
Googled it, yeah.
Exactly. Just Google it and like, oh yeah, that's the top 10. Yeah, we'll just throw that in there. Whatever.
And because it was such quick succession too, like if they spread them out throughout the movie, it would have worked better. But in that one scene when she first hits Earth, just on.
Yeah. And once you throw in a song like that in a climactic scene in that way, it's such a winking at the audience kind of thing that it eliminates all suspense that the scene might have had. Yeah, especially after Guardians of the Galaxy, where the music is used so well. But yeah, it was not a great use of music.
I agree. Okay, we've all given our thoughts on it, so I would imagine most people listening to this want to get into spoilers anyways. So let's begin the spoilers. Spoilers! Spoilers! Okay, not quite spoilers, but we'll just get heavier into the film right away. Some of the things that I did like, the Skrulls, I think that they're fascinating. And Ben Mendelsohn steals the show again.
He's fantastic.
This guy is so good. As the villain, he's such an interesting, conflicted... The villains seem to be more interesting in the Marvel movies lately than the heroes sometimes. So he was really good. I did wish that they would have more of a backstory on the Kree and the Skrulls and what they're about. I think they just dive into it a little too headlong for people who aren't familiar with it in the comics. They could have had kind of a Lord of the Rings intro where they say this is the history of these two planets and these two races and then begin the movie. But
that would have been a good idea.
That's why I was saying these should have been split up into two. Like the first movie is all about that war, because from this one going into this movie, I was expecting the Skrulls to be the villains, which obviously they weren't.
Which I actually really like that they flipped the script on that a little bit, because you are coming into it expecting it to be an all-out Skrull hunt.
No, but if you actually know the history of the Skrulls, they weren't villains.
Right.
It's the Kree that were the
Kree
villains.
were always the assholes. If you remember from Guardians of the Galaxy, Ronan the Accuser, who shows up in here, wasted, is a Kree, and he's the bad guy of that movie.
It's true.
So the Kree are a race of heroic, noble warriors. Is that what she calls them?
Well, that's another problem with the screenplay of this movie, too, is that once Ronan shows up, and you're saying to yourself, okay, I know that guy's a terrible, awful person. He's Thanos' right-hand man for some time, and just based on general audience knowledge of movie-making conventions, you know, right from the start that Jude Law is just going to be the bad guy. That's the way movies like this work. And it's no surprise when he's revealed as the bad guy. I wasn't surprised by that. Not knowing really about the Skrulls, I was a little surprised when they became knowledge that they were good. That was a nice twist. But yeah, the screenplay just failed on so many levels. And that,
you know what I mean about the anti-climax at the ending of the threat of him coming? And it should have been this big moment. The ships are approaching. The ships are approaching. The doors are unlocking. The missile, you know. And it wasn't. It just kind of happened. And then it was over. And I was just like...
And it failed, and it was kind of like,
See,
oh well.
Especially if they do ever go into Secret Invasion, you need to give that history of the Skrulls. Like, you introduce them here as just people looking for a home, that they're being hunted to extermination. And then all of a sudden, in the future, if they do it, you're going to just flip them into the bad guys. Like,
and that's actually one thing I was going to bring up is the Secret Invasion, which is, I've not read the story, but I know the plot of the story in that it's basically Skrulls that have, you know, assumed the identity of people that you know and whatnot. And I expected there to be some seeds of doubt planted in like some of the characters that are near and dear to your hearts, being maybe not who you thought they were. I thought that would have been interesting, and clearly that's not the direction that this story went. But
I'll tell you one scene at the end that ties into that is I was very disappointed with the revelation of Fury's eye injury. And how he lost his eye. And I was just like, that's kind of wasted from the whole scene from Winter Soldier. I once trusted a man and I lost my eye. Well, that's not what happened. And I thought, well, you have the perfect explanation for it in this movie. You could have had someone he completely trusts is a Skrull. And at the last minute, boom, and he ducks and he lost his eye. Doesn't that make more sense?
There's, and I don't know, pre-release Marvel press machine and many of the reviews that I read before I saw the movie made a lot about best cat in the world. This is the best cat I've ever seen in a movie. Awesome cat. And then the eye, Fury, we finally find out what happened to his eye. And the 90s this, 90s that. And all three of those were such letdowns when I finally saw the movie. There's, some references that they forced in about the 90s here and there. You take those out, and this movie could have taken place at any time period. The cat did some neato things that we've already seen Groot do in the series. Yeah, like you say, about Fury losing his eye. What an unspectacular story point.
Yeah.
Just another wasted opportunity.
And I agree. I found Goose the cat underwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
very
Completely,
underwhelming.
and I found the tentacle thing quite disgusting, to tell you the truth. It could have been lots of things. It could have had laser eyes or something.
Yeah, I was like, well, what's going to happen with this cat? Oh, that? Like,
Yeah.
Well, not just that. They were just using this cat for so much humor, and it's just, at some point, it just wasn't
It just
working.
wasn't
It was
funny.
like the same
Yeah.
thing. The one part I thought was a little amusing was when Fury holds the cat. Get him.
Thrusting him towards, which I chuckled, but it's an obvious joke.
Yeah.
I knew
And
it was coming.
And they use it more than once.
Yeah. And there were so many out of character moments for Nick Fury. Like, it bothered me in the moment, and then I kind of forgot about it. But once you talked about it, Ron, I completely agree. Where, like, you're in the middle of a serious escape, and he's like, oh, look at the cute little kitty. And I'm like,
Something Nick
that's
Fury
like-
would have never done.
No, and it's fine to see where a character was previous to the incarnation of the character that you know, but I can't think of a time where he would have, even if he was just straight out of basic training. Almost like you were saying a shortcut for Ronan. It's a shortcut to Nick Fury where, okay, we're going to have to partner her with somebody. Wouldn't it be cool if it was Nick Fury before he was the Nick Fury we know?
And not just that, especially when Nick Fury in the movie states that he went straight to the military after high school. So he was probably like 20-some years in the military, went into the espionage field pretty quickly on.
I think they were trying to go for some sort of buddy comedy type
Yeah.
thing, and it didn't work. They should have just kept Nick Fury as Nick Fury, and it would have played better as him kind of as the straight-laced hard ass. Also, Agent Coulson, just like Ronan, I expected all of these things to be, if you're going to bring back something or someone, do something really interesting with it. And I didn't think Coulson had anything to do.
No, it
He
didn't.
could have
It was
been anybody.
just- It was just, recognition. There's Coulson.
He could have been the
We
guy
all
who shoots
remember
Nick
him.
Fury as a Skrull
Yeah.
and lost his eye or something. Right?
That would have been a great moment.
Mhm.
Yeah. It seems like a lot of lost opportunity and wasted opportunities that, in my opinion, we've come up with better ideas at this table than what we saw on the screen.
Yeah.
And another big character that we haven't talked about yet is Annette Bening as, I guess, Wendy Lawson / the Supreme Intelligence.
Marvel as well.
Oh, yeah. That makes no sense.
I know.
according to the
Yeah.
comics. At the end of the movie, I didn't even know how I was supposed to feel about this character.
Well, like I said, like with that, both that and Brie Larson's father in the movie, we see a few flashbacks early on. You think, okay, we're going to really learn about these two characters. Like, why are you even casting Annette Bening in this role? You've done nothing with it. They weren't developed. They weren't properly explained.
It's like taking a shortcut to that
For
character
sure, that's
by casting a bigger name.
like you do
right?
with any character. But
Yeah.
then the screenplay just didn't do anything
Mhm.
with her. Didn't properly handle her.
Well, that's what I felt like when there was that big moment of her like standing up. They did those scenes after every time she falls. There's supposed to be like a big empowering moment.
Mm-hmm.
To me, it didn't land at all because they did so little to build up any of those stories. Like
Exactly.
you show
Right.
like a 3-second clip of her dad being an ass because his daughter crashed and he's concerned about being hurt. And he's like, "Oh my God, you shouldn't be doing this."
Yeah, and like I said,
Right?
I think there was a throwaway line that Brie Larson had too at one point about her dad, but none of that was built up or developed.
No,
and
at
it
all.
should have been. Like those
Sure.
moments like that when she gets up would have
should
been
have had that.
empowering if it had some meaning or gravitas to it.
Should
but
have
it
had that
didn't.
same payoff that you had in Wonder Woman when she's climbing the ladder into no man's land.
Yeah.
And that feeling of like,
Yeah.
here we go, she's finding herself.
Mhm.
One of the reviews I read before I saw it was, well, it's not as good as Wonder Woman, but it's still good. And I thought, oh, there's so much great imagery in the trailer. I hope it's better than Wonder Woman, but no, it's not. And yeah, there are a lot of moments in Wonder Woman that gave me goosebumps and just nothing with that character in this movie.
Gal Gadot is so well written in that movie. She has so many different sides to her personality.
Well,
and she's
and-
going through so many things, and you believe her every moment and
And there's
every
a lot
step along the way.
There's a lot of humor in that screenplay too. She plays a fish out of water very well. It's created very well. Brie Larson. Okay, yeah, she's originally from Earth, but her character comes back. She's been away for years fighting this intergalactic war, and she's got no memory. Her memory of Earth has been wiped, but she seems just comfortable right away in 90s Earth, and she knows what things are that Nick Fury is referring to, and she's able to respond, and none of that
Right.
made sense.
But
Right.
yeah, and once again, I would say that's more script than her. And
Yeah, Brie Larson was,
Yeah.
I should stress that, good as the character,
Yeah.
I think, but a lot of script problems.
I think that was the difference. Like with Wonder Woman, they were just concerned about about telling the story of Wonder Woman.
Mm-hmm.
This movie was like, we have to basically get this entire character's history out of the way because Endgame is coming out and people have to...
We need her.
know who she is.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it was just like even the whole thing with like Jude Law, when you find out that he's the bad guy, you spent a whole 3 minutes with him and them being buddy, and based on that, you're supposed to feel like super betrayed that he's a bad guy?
None of it's built up.
I think it was you mentioned it earlier, Ron. She killed a lot of people and showed no remorse. And the supposed villain going into this movie showed way more remorse about what he had done just to survive than she ever did. And she's on the winning side, so to speak.
Right. The Ben Mendelsohn
Yeah.
character, yeah.
Like when she's coming to the realization of what she did, he had a comment, my hands are filthy because of this war. He's done what he has to do and he's not happy about it, but there's that recognition. And there's never that on
He's
the other side.
most deeply written character in the movie, which is weird.
And there was the part when he took over Nick Fury's boss. He didn't kill his boss. He tied him up and left him alive. So he left him
And the
alone.
only reason why we know that Brie Larson and as Captain Marvel and the Kree have done terrible things is that there's a couple lines in the screenplay to say they've done terrible things. I mean, we don't see anything other than in that opening battle. It looks like they're killing people who are trying to kill them.
Mm-hmm.
So we haven't really seen anything to make it look like they've done something terrible to the Skrulls. There should be something there, even if it's a memory, a flashback, something that shows the extent that the war has taken on them morally.
Even if they're going to flip the script on you, you still have to have stakes
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
in the movie at the time you're watching it.
Mm-hmm.
They can say, okay, well, we got you to care about these people, but they're actually this.
Mhm.
But you have to get us to care about them first.
Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
I don't think this movie does that at all.
I'd say to me, this movie stands in the same vein as what I viewed the first Ant-Man movie, where it was a good introduction to the character, and I couldn't wait to see that character in another movie. Like, where I don't necessarily care about their introduction story, I just hope that something better is coming the way, which has happened with Ant-Man, thankfully, being included in Civil War, and of course, the second Ant-Man and Wasp movie, etc. Like, that character's kind of grown, and I can only hope Captain Marvel does the same.
For sure. And Kelly, just so we know, big fan of Captain Marvel?
No,
Not a fan?
no, not a fan.
And you do like all the other Marvel movies?
I do, yeah.
But not this one?
No.
So it's not gender politics.
Do you want to say that?
Correct.
Just want you to chime in there.
Yeah, and I do kind of feel like that is playing a huge part in this movie, is the fact that they're like men versus women, why they don't like it. But it's like, no.
Well, I wanted to like it more
Yeah,
for
of
that
course.
reason, because there was a lot of bad press before the movie came from, the idiot, sensitive white male who's threatened by this kind of movie. It got a lot of bad press from people who hadn't seen it yet. So I was hoping it would just be so good to show those
I know,
people. But
I know. And I was walking to the theater very confident, thinking I was going to love the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And they announced this movie
This was
years
no-
ago, so they have plenty of time to work on this screenplay and get it right.
And isn't she knowledgeable enough about intergalactic politics? Who knows? Maybe she was off the grid helping the Skrulls build their new houses in the new planet they found. But doesn't she already know what's going on with Thanos? Like, shouldn't she be kind of like watching the intergalactic news and know, hey, some big shit's going down with this Thanos guy already?
No.
It feels like she's
We don't
in
know
that,
what she's
in
up
that
to
circle
after her
of
movie
people, right?
ends, yeah.
I think that's kind of a big plot hole in the MCU.
Yeah, especially because she would be up there with the Skrulls. She was probably fighting against the Kree at this point because she said she was going after them.
Here's one thing that did annoy me. I don't know about you guys, but I thought when the Skrulls do show up in the beginning of this, like this is supposed to be humanity's first encounter with anything. And it seemed to me like people were just not all that shocked at seeing alien beings walking around.
Yeah.
No, and I mean, maybe some people at the secret base they went to shouldn't have been shocked. But Nick Fury, his shock was far tamer than it should have been. Yeah.
Or her friend
Or
and
her
her
friend.
daughter.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
should be screaming out the window.
What on earth? Yeah, exactly.
Right. There's an alien in front of you and they're making jokes.
Yeah.
Like that just takes all of the tension out of all the scenes.
Well, even the guy that was being a coroner on that alien, you would think this would have been like for him in his career. I'm the first human to ever dissect an alien.
Yeah, talk about nonchalant again. Just like, ho-hum, another day.
Yeah.
Alien life form on my table.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one kind of bothered me. Also, the whole idea at the end that the power was always inside of her. She has the wristbands and they're supposed to be her energy and she can't do anything without about it. That old power is inside you all the time. You just got to let it out kind of thing. I thought was a little bit lame.
But once again, it was the whole empowerment thing. And there was that chip on her where they were trying to nerf her powers, right?
Which the minute you see that chip, you know at some point it's going to get disabled and then her powers are going to reach the next level.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the explanation that she got her powers from the Tesseract. I mean, a lot of our heroes are getting their powers from the Infinity Stones.
Yeah.
From Scarlet Witch to Vision to Quicksilver to her. Seems like the handy power source to give someone superpowers these days.
Yeah.
We all can't have a radioactive spider on hand, I guess.
Yeah.
Or super soldier serum.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we talk about that post-credit scene? The middle one.
Yeah.
This is the first post-credit scene for a Marvel movie I wish I hadn't have seen. Because obviously it wasn't created for this movie. They're just plucking something out of Endgame.
Took a clip out of Endgame. And,
I didn't want to see anything from Endgame.
Hopefully it's early enough in Endgame that it doesn't feel like it's too much. But it was a wonderful moment. It was the best part of this movie. And it shouldn't have even been in this movie.
Yeah, and I don't think that'll be her first appearance in Endgame. We'll hopefully see her before that.
She'll probably
some
be
explanation as to where she's been.
She'll probably be on some far off planet. She'll get the beep and it's like, oh shit.
I could have waited for the next movie for that. I know she's in the next one, so I didn't need that reveal.
Yeah.
And I wish I didn't see the second one because it was shit.
I called it as the credits were going. Kelly was like, should we stay for this? And I was like, it's going to be the cat throwing up the Tesseract. And she's like, how did you know? And just like, what else could it be?
Yeah. I didn't predict that, but I'm like, it's going to be something quote unquote comedic.
I kind of like the Tesseract in this movie. The whole idea of it being still a part of the MCU through these movies. Might have been my favorite character. Just joking. But yeah, I kind of like, out of all the things that they brought from other movies, I thought that did work. It makes sense that they might want to go to Earth in the first place. When she's like, I want to build this warp drive or something, I was like, what are you talking about? Why would you go to Earth? But if you're using the Tesseract to do it, that makes sense.
Yeah. So they gave it to her to build this drive with type deal.
Yeah.
They just didn't know she was an alien.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's fun to see it. Like, some of the things they're doing with the
Yeah,
Tesseract.
I thought that worked okay. And something else that a lot of people are talking about for future MCU movies would be possible Skrulls in the MCU and who might not be who we think they are. I have no theories on this.
Well, that's the thing. In this movie, they didn't even bother really trying to establish any of that, right?
And I'm glad they didn't.
Because it would have been too much on top of everything else that they've done. Like, that did the whole splitting of the movies thing. Then this one, they could have actually
If you plan to see it at the end of this movie, then you have to think, well, why wasn't this being carried through
the rest?
It's better if they pick it up later. Now it's at least been established.
Yeah, that's all they need to do. Like you said, it's been planted, and we'll see what they do with it.
Okay. Can I talk about my favorite part of the movie?
That
you
ended?
can.
My favorite part of the movie happened before the movie started. And that would be the great Stan Lee tribute that they did in the title credits.
Yeah, that was actually pretty awesome.
And the way that unfolded, too, as it began, and I've said it before in this podcast, I love Michael Giacchino's Marvel fanfare that started about 4 years ago or so that replaced the previous one, which was just okay. And the music itself gives me goosebumps. And that first image of Stan Lee popped up in the Marvel logo, and I thought, oh, so great. So nice that they've included him in this. And then when more and more Stan Lees, and I realized this whole thing is Stan Lee, and like I almost wept. Like I thought, this is so nice. Such a perfect tribute.
Me too.
I loved it. Yeah.
I had a lump in my throat before the movie started. So yeah, I agree, Ron. That
all
was my favorite
from there.
Yeah, it was my favorite part.
You know, I did kind of enjoy seeing Stan Lee reading the script to Mallrats to prepare for his little cameo.
Out of all the things from the 90s, I thought that was the smartest thing that they did.
And not just that, it was like, I bet a lot of people are not going to actually know the reference because so many people have seen Mallrats.
Right, but
I've never seen Mallrats. So
he's actually practicing
I thought there's something here that I don't know, but it's...
That's what I was wondering. Like, he repeated the same line like 3 times. I'm like, oh, because he's practicing his lines for the movie to record. I was like, fuck, that's awesome.
And Kevin Smith reacted to it too.
Yeah.
He tweeted, he said, it brought me to tears after my movie career has been built on referencing movies to actually have a movie reference me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So just kind of wish it would have been a better movie, I guess. But
exactly.
No, that was pretty awesome.
Yeah. I felt like clapping.
And that little nod that she kind of gives them, you know, kind of like the breaking of the fourth wall almost.
Oh, to his actual cameo?
Yeah, like when she kind of looks at him, she's like...
Just does the head nod.
Right. He's not a Skrull.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was great. I hope I enjoy it more on a second time when I know what it is now and my hopes aren't quite as high, and I can just refer to it as lower tier Marvel with Thor 2 and Iron Man 3 for me.
I don't buy all the Marvel movies on Blu-ray, and I'm not sure I'm going to buy this one. I did like it, but I'm not excited about watching it again.
I'm still recommending it. I'm not saying I didn't like it, but it's just there's so much of it I didn't like. It's so close. It's like a 51-49 for me.
Yeah, like the hype around it is so up there that, and this movie was nowhere near meeting that hype.
Yeah, it was entertaining, but the bar that is set by the previous movies in this franchise, I would agree that it's a bit of a letdown. It's not awful. I didn't hate it. I didn't want to walk out by any means, but I just was hoping for better than what I got, ultimately.
I didn't want to walk out is not a glowing recommendation by any stretch, Paul. But yeah, no, I see what you're saying. And yeah, my final thought is that, yeah, I do like the movie, and Marvel fans will find material to enjoy here. Maybe not a ton. There's a lot of faults, but I give it a mild recommendation.
We should say it opened spectacularly to like almost 150 million, they're calling it this weekend. So Marvel's not complaining box office wise.
Sixth highest opening of all time.
Right. So Marvel's, their brand is definitely working. We'll see what next week's drop off is.
Hopefully they take some of the criticisms that it is getting seriously, the serious criticisms.
Yeah.
And for another Captain Marvel movie, it just needs a better screenplay.
I'd like to see different people in charge of the next one.
Yep.
And different directors too. I don't think the director handled it.
There's lots of great female directors out there. I would love to see Catherine Bigelow make a Captain Marvel movie. Oh my goodness, that would be fantastic. She'd destroy it.
Yeah.
It'd be so good. Throw that out there. I would say we're all on the same page for lukewarm recommendations.
Yeah.
Okay. Shall we move on to our rant and rave? I'll go first. What the hell? I have two things to review today. The first one is something I just watched. It's a new series, I guess, on Netflix. It's called Afterlife, written and directed by the great Ricky Gervais. I watch everything he does.
That just dropped, didn't it?
Just dropped on Friday.
Blasted through it, eh?
It's only 6 episodes at a half an hour each.
Okay.
So it's like a really long movie.
Right.
And we stopped it and didn't start. We started it and didn't stop. I should say Kelly just loved it. She's like Derek, his last series. He's really getting into some more deeper emotional territory in his last ones. Extras was about fame and life's too short. It was dealing with people with disabilities, and like he's always tackling something. And Derek was his series about an old age home and dealing with growing old and death. And this one, similar theme. He plays a guy named Tony whose wife has just passed away, the love of his life. And he's decided to use his grief kind of as a superpower, doing and saying anything he wants with absolute impunity, because who cares anymore? His life is over as he knows it. So if he gets mugged in the street, go ahead. He'll take them on. He has no fear right now. And so it's kind of a guy who's dealing with grief and trying to find meaning in life still. And it's very good. It's not as comedic as his other stuff. It's not meant to be. There's plenty of laughs in it, though. He's dealing with a lot of his regulars from all of his other shows. Lots of faces popping up. 2 new actors that he's working with are great in it. Penelope Wilton, I think is her name. She's from Downton Abbey. Terrific in this. She's so good. Walder Frey plays his dad from Game of Thrones.
Nice.
And he's almost as nasty in this, believe it or not. Ashley Jensen, who he worked with in Extras, was kind of his goofy friend girl. That's kind of a new romantic interest in this, maybe. I don't want to say too much. It's rich. It'll make you sad. Pull out the hankies. I know Kelly did. Dealing with serious subject matter, and if you're ready for it, I'm sure you'll get something from it.
Even his version, his original Office, brought a tear to my eye at times. So he's a great comedian. He's one of my favorites. I'm as big a fan as you. I haven't seen Derek yet, but really looking forward to Afterlife myself.
Yeah. He deals with human beings on a real basic level, real things that we deal with in life, and how we feel about big subjects. And it's nice to see somebody doing that. And I thought it was great. Big recommendation. Okay, the next one is the highly controversial HBO documentary, Leaving Neverland. I watched that last week as well. This is, of course, detailing the alleged abuses on 2 boys, Wade Robson and James Safechuck, who both are speaking out against the alleged abuses of Michael Jackson, and that they were both sexually molested by him as children. It's a 2-part documentary, 4 hours. I watched it all. It's not easy stuff. Anybody who watches this documentary and doesn't believe these 2 guys, I think, is fooling themselves. The amount of detail that these guys get into, you can't dream this stuff up. It's hard to listen to and hard to imagine, and you just want these stories to stop. And they're very clear about why they didn't come forward before, and it makes absolute sense. just the world of Michael Jackson and the web that they were entangled in his life. It's very detailed and sad, and it'll make you reevaluate everything you think about Michael Jackson. At least it did for me. Since then, I've heard a lot of radio stations around the world are pulling his music, just like R. Kelly. It's that whole thing, how much genius are we going to take before we deal with the crimes that this guy has committed. Mm-hmm. So it's up to everybody who sees it how they feel about Michael Jackson afterwards. I'm not a big enough Michael Jackson fan for it to affect me that much. If I didn't listen to his music again, I can survive. Let's just say I have no doubt that the stories are true, and I believe that he was a very sad, sick monster who did a lot of good things like Bill Cosby did. Mm-hmm. Bill Cosby spent decades doing all the right things in public and all the wrong things in private, and it's very similar.
And it's one of those things that, as a fan, not that I was ever a huge Michael Jackson fan, but I appreciated his talent. The things come out and you hope that they're wrong, but at some point you reach the reasonable limit where you can't deny the allegations any further. Mm-hmm. So much like Bill Cosby, I mean, I loved his humor when I was a kid. I enjoyed his show and his stand-ups, but then once you reach that point, like you said, you're fooling yourself if you just decide to live in blindness and not believe the people that were victimized by these people and their genius. Yeah, and at what cost?
Until recently, I thought probably that the accusations that had been brought about against Michael Jackson before were cash grab opportunities by the parents involved. I thought, Michael Jackson, sure, he's an easy target. He's rich. He seems such a naive man and so
he admits to sleeping with children.
Yeah, exactly. And he's an easy target. And I think maybe those kids were manipulated by their parents to try and make money. But yeah, since this Finding Neverland has come out, and I haven't seen it yet, but just based on the reactions to it, I'm thinking, wow, chances are my evaluation is dead wrong, and it is what people say it is about him.
As the father of 2 young boys right now, I can't imagine that you would watch it and not be affected by it.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like a pleasant 4 hours in front of the TV set at all.
So you want to put your hand on the remote and fast forward some of the stuff you're listening to.
Mm-hmm.
So then now you've seen this about Michael Jackson, but you're not a big fan, but you are a big Woody Allen fan.
Mm-hmm. So, it's totally different for me. If you know exactly the Woody Allen case, which I've studied and researched, I have different opinions on it. Yeah. The Woody Allen case is very different. It's all about one particular incident, and to me, it makes no sense that it possibly could have happened. That's my opinion on that. He's a weird guy in other ways.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, the fact that he married his stepdaughter.
It was never his stepdaughter. That's another.
It was the stepdaughter of his ex-wife.
Right. It's a younger woman it was his girlfriend's daughter.
Still creepy.
Yeah, but he had almost no relationship with her. And yeah, it's creepy, absolutely, but it's not criminal. There's a lot of guys out there with younger girlfriends than Woody Allen has.
No, it's true. I mean, I think it's the fact that
they've been together in a stable relationship since then. Him and Soon Yi, I wouldn't consider their relationship sick or twisted in any way if they've been a happy couple for 20, 30 years now.
I'm just not really all that familiar with the case. I just know those little things, and I'm just like, it's kind of just weird.
I love Woody Allen, so yeah, I had to, with good conscience, research it and find out, and I've come on the other side of it.
I watched Birth of a Nation this weekend, and I've had it on the PVR for probably more than a year, and I thought, okay, I'll not watch anything else this man ever makes.
This is the original D.W. Griffith.
No. Nate Parker.
Gotcha.
Will never have a career in the entertainment industry again. So I thought, okay, fine. This is supposed to be a very good movie. I won't be supporting him financially by watching it because it's been on my PVR forever before I knew about the allegations against him. And yeah, okay, so it was a very good movie. And if the allegations against him are true, he's a terrible man and did something awful. And a woman took her life because of it. It's just strange, yeah. You can't just detach yourself from the accusations against these people, whether it's people are leveled against Elia Kazan. Okay, well, he named names. We can't watch Elia Kazan movies anymore. Well, that's so tame compared to what some of these people today are accused of, be it the people we've just mentioned.
There's a cutoff point when somebody's an asshole or difficult to deal with, or when somebody's done something selfishly that is affecting other people's lives in a very negative manner.
Exactly, yeah. Black or white, there's different shades, and some of those shades are terrible, and people should suffer the consequences if they've behaved terribly.
And I'll say, I still find it kind of crazy, when you look at some of these other things that people have done, and compared to what Mel Gibson did.
Well, if his career ended for 10 years because he drunkenly made some anti-Semitic comments to a cop, yeah, then absolutely. Well, Michael Jackson's life is over. That's that. But
anti-Semitic.
Nate Parker.
If you had Walt Disney or Charles Lindbergh or Henry Ford on tape back in the day.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Well, the president of America, who's tweeted it. But Mel Gibson's like his punishment is ridiculous compared to like some of these other guys. Chris Brown, what he did to Rihanna, he's like, no, he's still touring, and yet Mel Gibson is still in the doghouse with people refusing to work with him. It just really seems like disproportionate.
It
sometimes.
is, and it's the evaluation system always seems to be, to me, one of an economic nature too, which is so sad, which is the fact that Bill Cosby was untouchable at the height of his career because he was generating so much money for people. But that's a sad fact that, your amount of popularity can actually protect you from these things.
That's the way the world works.
Yeah.
Your economic viability determines your level of protection, really.
Maybe not anymore, though. Maybe things have now changed in the last year or so.
And, well, we'll see how long that even lasts, right?
Hopefully forever.
Yeah. So that was a big recommendation for Leaving Neverland.
Feel-good movie of the year.
Yeah, and Afterlife. I recommend them both, definitely. Two not easy subjects, that's for sure, but you should enjoy them. Dex, what do you got today?
All right, I'll talk about a couple things. The first one I want to talk about is a movie I've been trying to catch up with for almost 20 years. I remember back in 2001, 2002, seeing a very striking poster for a Canadian movie called Atanarjurat, The Fast Runner.
Interesting.
And I remember then after seeing that poster, hearing the reviews, and the reviews were spectacular. And that was a time in my life when I saw a movie in the theater every week, and most of them, or half of them, were independent films or foreign films, and somehow this movie just escaped me. And I never saw it until recently. I caught up with it on TV, recorded it in HD, and it was great. Worth the wait. A little background on it. I wrote down some things because, there's going to be some mispronunciations here. So, Atanarjurat is the first movie in the history of cinema shot entirely in the Inuktitut language of the Canadian Arctic. The Inuit people 100% embody the cast and crew of this film. It came out in 2002 at the same time as another much higher profile Canadian movie called Men with Brooms that you guys might remember.
Yeah.
Canada's superstar Paul Gross was behind that movie.
Let's not go that far.
No, sadly.
And it was about curling, so how could you miss?
Exactly. Sadly for many people he is, but and people just thought that was the high-profile Canadian movie of the year. Atanarjurat clobbered it at the box office. This 3-hour epic shot entirely in the Inuktitut language, played for months. It made back more than double its budget, and every 11 years at the Toronto International Film Festival, they get the attendees, the critics, and the filmmakers to rank the best Canadian movies of all time. So at the 2004 Toronto Film Festival, Atanarjurat ranked number 4 on the 10 best list already. The 2015 festival, it was up to number 1. So it's currently considered the best Canadian movie ever made, and it reaped a ton of awards, and it deserves them. It was directed by Zachariah Canuck. It stars Natar Ungulak as Atanarjurat, the titular character.
The Fast Runner.
The Fast Runner himself, and he is indeed a fast runner. It was written by Paul.Bohemian with additional story and writing support from a host of others, including from the director Canuck. It's an epic in every sense of the word, this movie. It tells the story of a centuries-old Inuit legend. There's elements of betrayal and revenge, and there's shamanism and mysticism, and the entire movie was shot with the principle of not just telling this story, but also as a living document to the ways of life of the Inuit, which by this point had fallen far out of use, and there weren't many people left alive anymore who knew about all the different ways of the life of the Inuit. And you kind of see both elements in this movie. Then you see, as people are talking about what they're doing and what's going on story-wise and plot-wise, they're doing things like removing the skin from a seal and preparing its meat for food and preparing its skins and hides for clothing, and everything you see on screen, all the skins and hides that people use as their clothing or for their tents, were made in the traditional Inuit way. So it's just, the entire movie is a living document in that way. There's no technology on hand, even artificially, in terms of the stitching of the costumes. It's tough to watch in that way. I'd say that I've done my research on it, I've read up on it, and they say every animal killed in the movie, and you don't see any on-screen deaths of a seal, because, that would be troubling to watch for anyone. But like I say, you do see the bodies of a couple of birds, a couple of seals being prepared in this way. They are all entirely used and prepared in the traditional Inuit way. Nothing has gone to waste. They cooked the meat on set, fed the crew with them. The skins were all used. No animal's life was a waste in the making of this movie. I have very few criticisms of the movie. It was just highly highly entertaining, great watch. I know they changed the original folkloric story a little bit in that the original tale is far more about revenge, and this deals more with redemption, which is more of a modern idea and feels right for the story. The big criticism is that it stars a lot of people wearing white skins with big hoods, and they all have long black hair, and it's often hard to tell them apart. They all have names that I can't pronounce. And so story-wise, you really got to pay attention to follow what's going on. And not that it's extremely difficult, but it's problematic here and there for a dumb white guy from Alberta to follow this Inuit tale. But I highly recommend this movie. Yeah, it is. It's a great epic story. You will not be disappointed when the fast-running scene comes about. It's a great chase scene. And
I should say, the way you're describing it almost sounds like a documentary, but it's very cinematic.
It is very cinematic.
It's a big widescreen. He's using the landscape gloriously.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I say, it's shot entirely in the Canadian Arctic, and it's just a beautiful film to look at. It's epic in every sense of the word. Great cinematography for sure. 100% natural light, of course. The thing is, that documentary aspect of it is so much a part of it too, though. That's how they got funding for the movie. They couldn't get funding through normal channels like Telefilm or Canada Foundation for the Arts or whatever, but the National Film Board of Canada, which typically only funds documentaries and not fiction films, they appealed to them and said, this is kind of almost a documentary in this way, and they said, oh, okay, and they funded it. So yeah, it's not documentary, but
it's
documentary
an examination of a culture, yeah,
exactly.
But it's not shot like a documentary. No. It's not this handheld kind of in-your-face stuff. It's very cinematic.
No, yeah, I mean, you'd think a great Hollywood director was behind it by how great the camera is
kind of used. Like an Arctic David Lean.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's like I said, like when I use the term epic, I'm putting it up there with things like Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago, and Master and Commander is a more recent great epic. And culturally, it's so strange because we don't know anything about this culture, and you would try to imagine how someone can express infidelity when you have to sleep in the same bed in the same one-room small tent with your brother and both of your wives, and all four of your naked bodies are right beside each other. And yet when your brother is sleeping with your wife while that's going on, and that leads to some of the betrayals and so on that happen in this movie. Anyways.
You didn't grow up like that?
No, strangely enough.
It's weird. I should check out my family history.
You might be a little off there, huh?
You didn't have sleepovers at Neverland?
No, unfortunately not. Anyways, yeah, big recommendation for Atanarjurat, The Fast Runner. Many think it's the greatest Canadian movie of all time, so I just wanted to highlight it for the podcast and hopefully get some people to check it out. Rave number 2 will be, I haven't reviewed any CD releases on the podcast in a long time, so I thought in terms of cultural impact and just how good it is, I brought Harry Potter, the John Williams soundtrack collection, a 7-CD box set from La La Land Records, which focuses on the first 3 Harry Potter movies and their scores by John Williams, the only 3 Harry Potter movies that John Williams scored. It's got the full score for all 3 films, nearly 4 hours of unreleased material on this box set. If you're a Harry Potter fan, it's almost a must-buy. These are great scores. Maybe not as good as some other stuff that's come out more recently. Like there's a great Schindler's List special edition that came out recently. I think Schindler's List is a better score, but this is just such a great release to talk about. It's a limited edition of 5,000 copies at $100 US. Might not sell out overnight, but this is Harry Potter we're talking about. It's not going to last for long. I wouldn't be surprised if it's gone by the end of the year. So pick it up if you're interested. There are 3 CDs dedicated to Philosopher's / Sorcerer's Stone, depending on what you're calling it, and 2 CDs each for Chamber of Secrets and The Prisoner of Azkaban. A ton of bonus tracks that weren't on the previous soundtrack releases for these films. Great box set. Very nicely produced, and I highly recommend it to music fans and Harry Potter fans.
Can't go wrong with John Williams. I do love that main theme from Harry Potter. It's so
Me
good.
too.
Absolute classic theme. Yeah.
And they must have borrowed that for all the other movies.
That main theme pops up in every one of the Harry Potter movies, but actually most of the other themes don't make it past the second film. Even for Prisoner of Azkaban, John Williams kind of did a 180 turn in how he approached the material writing instead of a big orchestral score. And yeah, it's got big orchestral moments, but he really focused on sort of a medieval tone to what he was writing. Very Renaissance-y, and that kind of paved the way for other composers to come into the series and do something different than as they did. But they all kept using that main Hedwig's theme as it's known throughout the series. I wouldn't be surprised if all of the Harry Potter scores get this treatment eventually because Harry Potter is so big, but this John Williams collection is going to be big for a lot of people.
Okay, that's Harry Potter box set, and I always had a problem with that.
Yeah, I think I'm saying it close when I say Atanarjurat, The Fast Runner.
I knew what you were talking about, so you got it close enough. Paul, you want to go?
Sure. What I'm going to review is going to seem like fluff pieces after what you guys talked about, so I thank you for the segue of Harry Potter. First thing I'm going to review is Bohemian Rhapsody. It's a movie that I wanted to catch up on, and we discussed briefly on the podcast on the Oscars show. This is a movie I was really curious about from the inception of the project, being a fairly big Queen fan when I was growing up. Not that I had all the albums, but had a couple of the greatest hits albums. So this was on my radar to see him. I can't say that I was disappointed about not seeing it in the theater. It didn't really grab me as much as I had hoped to. It seemed a bit paint by numbers to some level, very much a crowd-pleasing movie. You mentioned, Ron, that, yeah, this doesn't get into the nitty-gritty and dark side of Freddie Mercury. It's very much a lighter take on his character. Not that it doesn't deal with some darker aspects of his personality, but it just doesn't dig into them, which is fine. This movie has a lot of humor in it, which was maybe a little bit of a surprise to me, and that was such a lighter tone, but a thoroughly enjoyable watch. Like, you're practically singing along to the movie as it's going along. So no complaints in that regard. The only complaint is nothing groundbreaking, but the cast is fantastic. All the people they get to play the bandmates are great, and the boy from Jurassic Park actually played Deke in this. So it was one of those things where you've seen him so many times as a child, and then you're seeing him up on screen, and you're like, where do I know that face from? I've seen him, and then looking him up on IMDb afterwards.
Joseph Mazzello?
Yep.
Yeah.
But yeah, overall, it's a thoroughly enjoyable watch. Worthy of Best Picture. That's so subjective, and you can get into the weeds on that. I wouldn't put it up there for me with among the best pictures I've seen this year, but a really enjoyable film.
Worthy of Best Actor?
Oh, hands down. He is phenomenal in this, where he encapsulates Freddie Mercury so much. At times you feel like you're watching Freddie Mercury, like, because I haven't seen Rami Malek in a lot. I know him from Mr. Robot and a few other minor things, but yeah, this is star making for sure. So yeah, not an all out rave, but a very fun watch.
Yeah, definitely worth seeing.
Absolutely. And then the second thing I'm going to rave about, nobody here will be surprised, How to Train Your Dragon 3, The Hidden World. It's a very good resolution to the trilogy. I would say anybody who's listened to the podcast knows that I'm a big fan of this series, and I would say this is the second best movie in the trilogy. I rewatched the first two before seeing this, just to refresh my memory on the little details, as I like to do. And yeah, this really captures all the heart, all the poignant character moments that you want in saying goodbye to these characters. And it was interesting watching all three movies in close succession, seeing the progression of animation between each movie, because the first one came out in 2010 and the second one came out in 2014. It's amazing. As you watch them, this series gets more cinematic as it goes. Some of the scenes in this movie are breathtaking. There's kind of a pseudo dance scene between two dragons that's breathtaking and beautiful. And I mean, it's got an all-star voice cast and they all hit their numbers. It's just, all in all, a very heartfelt and worthy wrap-up to a series that I love.
That's good. I'm glad you liked it as much as the other ones.
Yeah.
It's hard to get the third one right.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah. Excellent. So How to Train Your Dragon and Bohemian Rhapsody.
You got it.
2 raves.
Yep.
Okay. Ivan, what do you got?
All right. Well, I'll do 2 raves as well.
Okay.
Keep up the good flow.
Sure.
The first one is going to be a Netflix series called The Umbrella Academy. This show was really, really good. It really blew me away. I just started watching because it's based on a comic book property and I'll always thing. And it really sucked me in right away. And I just watched the whole thing, didn't stop. Great world, great characters. The actors were amazing, especially the child actor that they had in here was really top notch. Like, he was the best character on the show by far, in my opinion. Ellen Page is also on this show. Yeah. She did a great job, and they did a great job of building this world and building the story and letting it kind of take its time. And it's such an out there property as well. Like, it is weird. It was just such a good show. I don't want to get into it too much because don't want to spoil things for people, but just a really nice job done, and I'm really excited for season 2. It was like one of the most watched shows on Netflix, I think. It blew everybody's expectations out of the water for the show, and I think you've seen it as well and really enjoyed it.
I have. I loved it. I couldn't stop watching it either. It did a great job of world building. The overall tone was really good. It was weird when it needed to be. It was comedic when it needed to be, but it also had those poignant character moments as well. Its use of music, which is no surprise if you know who the writer of the comic is, was fantastic. The writer of the comic is Gerard Way. He's part of My Chemical Romance, which is kind of a emo rock punk band. You know, a musician writing a comic and then being involved in the making of the series. The music is great. Yeah, I loved it. Can't wait for season 2.
I have a third friend too, besides you guys, who's raved about it. So
It does
interest
look
is really
interesting.
peaking.
I watched the trailer, and the trailer looks good. The chimp got me right away. It's,
Yeah, you don't want to get too much into it. Colin Farrell is also in it.
Mhm.
Mary J. Blige is one of the characters in here. I was like, really? But no, she was great as well. Like, always when you have musicians kind of try and do acting turns, but it's such an out there show. I can't even begin to tell you like all the craziness in here.
Yeah, very diverse characters, but a very good use of each of those characters in a very meaningful way.
Yeah. And my second rave will be a movie called The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then Bigfoot.
I've been wanting to watch this one for some time, since I first heard of it.
Yeah, and then for all you guys out there, quick synopsis of this movie is movie's about a man named Calvin Barr, and he kills Hitler and then Bigfoot. I know the title is very tricky there, right? Going into this movie, I was expecting a movie very much kind of on the lines of Bubba Hotep, and of course the fact that Sam Elliott plays the main character. So I was like, fucking A, I'm watching it. But wow, was I really surprised when this movie was very down to earth, grounded. This is not one of those crazy movies. It was like very much character driven. Sam Elliott does an amazing job. He's a retired soldier and he gets asked to go and hunt Bigfoot. And then kind of see a little flashback story of his younger self and the whole thing that happened around his assassination of Hitler. So well done. I mean, there's really no spoilers because the title tells you what it is. You just kind of have to like watch it for that character.
I look forward to seeing it someday.
Yeah.
Sure.
sounds
Really
just
good.
different enough for me to check out.
Yeah.
What was the title again?
The Man Who Killed Hitler and Then Bigfoot.
All right. And The Umbrella Academy.
Yes.
2 more raves.
Yeah.
Cool. All right, let's wrap it up. Next time, we'll be back to review. We're not sure. Either Shazam, us, or maybe we'll get around to our Best of the 1960s show. One of those. We'll see. Until then, please subscribe and give us a rating on our iTunes, Apple Podcasts. You can like and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if interested, you can always search for our past reviews at our website, whyweseemovies@libsyn.com. Thanks for listening, and take care out there.
So long.
Later.
Auf Wiedersehen.